Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Architecture of Health. I'm Deb Voisin, and this week my guest is Diana Moll. She is a licensed acupuncturist and an advanced student of biogeometry. And guys, if there was ever a perfect topic for the Architecture of Health, I think this is it. Welcome to our show, Diana.
Thanks, Deb. So I'm also working towards being a practitioner in environmental home solutions. So that really dives right into the whole architecture thing.
And this is all work developed by a Dr. Kareem out of Egypt. And I'll let you go into the history of it. But guys, the reason I wanted to have Diana, not only is she one of my smartest, nerdiest, most holistic thinking friends who I've known for a long time, she has helped me out of some environmental crises. I was living in this apartment, there was toxic mold and all the EMFs and Wi-Fi, all sorts of things way beyond my control. And I was just kind of giving in to the idea my health was going to be bad. And out of the blue, I find out she's been studying this work that I heard about 10 years ago on Bulletproof Radio. And I could not believe that right here I'm talking to her in my own house. And then she tells me she has these environmental home solutions, which is biogeometry, is like a key aspect of biogeometry is how do you resolve energies that you have no control over. So, Diana, you want to explain sort of the realm of this work and what it can be used for? Biogeometry.
Sure. So really biogeometry is good for everything, but let's unpack the name. Bio is life force or life. Geo is earth. Metry, of course, is measurement. So we're looking at life force measurement of the earth. So then with these measurements of biogeometry and the use of our shape solutions, we can restore the life force from the earth and the body's energy exchange because we are open energy systems with everything that we are in contact with, either physically or energetically. And so we energize the energy which we harmonize, all these I's, and enhance is called BG3. And BG3 stands for the three wavelengths, which are found in sacred power spots worldwide. They are the same everywhere. And so we are harmonizing and bringing up this kind of energy, and that just enhances our lives and our health, and sometimes in ways that we would not suspect even.
And guys, I love that Diana is an acupuncturist as well, because there's a precision to this work, a very precise detecting of energetic spots and a very precise placement of amendments. How about I tell them the 5G tower story? Yes, I will. So I'm a couple blocks from some Death Star looking 5G tower, and I was bemoaning to Diana, oh, there's nothing I can do. They're gonna, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm just gonna get sick like everybody else. And she was like, oh, well, it's just an energy. We can work with the energy. We can even turn the energy. So we went over and she assessed the energy of the area and found what was called the sweetening spot in the earth. Was that what you called it?
We found a power spot.
A power spot. And it wasn't even on the tower, it was around the tower. And my friend and I are watching Diana very precisely find spots. And she finds this one exact spot. And then she gets out an amendment, which was this plastic shape. And the second she put that in that exact spot, we heard a cacophony of frogs and toads. Like we heard this celebration by the animal kingdom. There was no way we could have planned that. We had already been there like 10 or 15 minutes. If that was them reacting to being there, us being there, it would have happened earlier. In fact, we heard like an occasional every 4 or 5 minutes we heard her. But the second she placed that, and I've seen this over and over where something so woo-woo seems like it would have no effect, or that there could be forces so formidable there's nothing I can do about them. So you want to start talking about sort of how was this whole thing ever developed?
So biogeometry was developed and is being continually expanded by Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who is from Egypt. He's an architect and son of an architect. And he was working in the Egyptian Museum of Antique Medicine. I may not have that exactly right. And the director introduced him to something called radiesthesia. And that is basically working with a pendulum, but not working with it in this sort of yes, no mental mode that we seem to use a lot in the West. And once he learned about this radiesthesia, he went to the place where they had done a lot of research on that in France. There's a specific house, La Maison du Radiesthesia, and they actually were expecting him. Yeah, they were expecting him. Some psychic had said there will be an Egyptian coming, and there he was, and you need to give him all the goods. And so he got all the original research and the books that the researchers had compiled, and also a lot of tools. And so between all these things, he combined the modern concepts of physics, harmonics, perception, and even Pythagorean theorem to develop the physics of quality, which is what we base our measurements on. So it's really an ancient Egyptian measurement, the radiesthesia, that we're using. He just, he kind of sweetened it up with these more modern researches. And then because he's an architect, he began taking this into other shapes that can be used in buildings, in homes. And then he got a patent. This is actually a patented science for 2 years of research that he did involving microorganisms and immunity. And it was found that the shapes increase the immunity of microorganisms. So there's probably not a lot of placebo involved with microorganisms.
I want to say that placebo effect is the biggest question with woo woo and energy things. And yet, placebo is the most powerful drug that exists. That's why drugs have such a hard time overcoming placebo. And I think the interesting thing here is you've even helped me with my pet. The pet had no idea. The pet wasn't even in the building. The pet was not even, and there was a radical change in her recovery and energy from something. And there was no way we could have had a placebo effect with an animal that wasn't even in the same room with us. So that is honestly the biggest. My own son was grilling me the other day about some of these shapes and symbols, like, "Oh, it's in your head, mom." And I've seen so many cases where this is absolutely precise and unexplainable in any other way. The responses and the shifts that I've seen, and the most interesting thing is the shifts are so vast. When you added the because I've been one of her guinea pigs as she's been getting certified, and like one day she'll amend this spot in the building, and the next day an issue that had been going on here for 3 years, my toxic mold struggle, the next day I was in a hotel and the landlord had to fix the problem. I mean, where they had been unwilling to even talk about the problem the next day after there was an amendment. So and on many levels. I want to say I love that it's tied to architecture. And you guys know, I was in school briefly for architectural engineering, and I always want to bring that holistic structural thinking to this. And one reason I was attracted to this when I heard Dave Asprey's Bulletproof podcast was that Dr. Karim was an architect who mostly looked at these timeless shapes. That's why I use the golden mean Fibonacci spiral. Not that it's part of biogeometry at all, but that this idea that there are energies that are archetypal and transcend all time and space. So do you want to go further into sort of what is it? How does it work, or what does it look like?
Well, it kind of looks like me walking around with a pendulum and muttering, but what's really going on is I am detecting the BG3 um, and measuring it through the movement of my pendulum. So I'm sort of transmuting it through my energy system into the hand that's holding the pendulum.
And I wanted to ask because there's the possibility that someone could force a pendulum to do something the way they, and I know I when I used to muscle test for foods and allergies, I could sometimes, will a different reaction. So how do you how do the practitioners create accurate readings and avoid some kind of conscious manipulation of the energy and as it's being expressed through a pendulum?
I think that's a great question, and certainly one which observers struggle with. Um, Sometimes I'll be measuring something and the energy will be so strong that little pendulum will just be whipping around, and people say, "Oh, you are just spinning that," and I'm like, "No, it's kind of spinning me." But to be very clear about your measurements, you just need to not care. Sort of not care or be curious, like, what is this? Not yes or no. Sinking the energy into the lower dantian helps because then it's sort of out of the way of the mental. Um, and you can do the bad thing. You can try to influence it, and then you know what it feels like. Um, Sometimes, so like when you're doing the mental radiesthesia, where it's yes or no, we ask, well, is my name James? And then it'll go, it's usually, I think, counterclockwise for no. Um, and then you say, is my name Diana? And for me, it would go clockwise. Um, and then that's what's used to kind of program the answers. But here it's like there's no programming. We're just kind of a clean slate. And there are ways that you can always clean your chakras or something like that. Um, I guess because I've been doing it so long, and actually I was playing with this way of measuring energy just with a gold chain like almost 20 years ago. Um, and I found that with the yes and no, if I tried to go no when it was yes, I would actually be physically sick. Well, I mean, I wouldn't be vomiting, but I would get really nauseous. So for me, that was a way to tell if I'm forcing it or not.
And I remember also like 20 years ago reading the book something like Power versus Force, which
Right.
talks about there are certain frequencies, listening to death metal punk will create a physiological shrinking, and other harmonies, other harmonics create the basis for nourishing energies. And I think maybe what you're saying too is because you can harmonize almost anything, you do not have a good evil, even though it's positive negative, it's like yes no sort of but with that idea that you could harmonize almost anything, I don't have to give the 5G tower the power and therefore make me have to manipulate, like this is gonna say no or this is gonna say yes. So that objectivity, but also one thing I've learned from you is the tools that you use matter, and there's a precision to what you do. You're measuring many different, you have like something called the har, you have different ley lines, you have different grid lines. She even brought a map, an aerial view map of the building I'm in to be able to suss out where to start investigating a problem. So do you want to say something about the tools?
We love the tools. We love all the tools. So there's different ways to measure BG3. There's a few different pendulums involved. There's the BG16, which just measures BG3. There's the iCup, which Dr. Karim invented for himself, and that measures BG3, but you have to program it to do that, but it can also measure different levels. It's a little bit more refined than the other one. Both of them emit BG3 from the tip, which is kind of cool. I use one of the advanced pendulums called the P3, and that only measures like the really top, juiciest, best quality BG3. And the advantage to that is that when I'm measuring with a really good tool, then that's the only energy that's running through me. So like when you can make a pendulum out of anything and it will pick up the energy, but if you're doing a lot of work with it, you don't want to be just running everything through your nervous system.
So the some of the tools that you use, this is something I've seen you bring over. You call it the HAR, right? You want to tell us what this does? Yeah, it's hard to see. There's grid lines on there.
It's not coming out real good. So this is the HAR, also, which is the acronym of the Human Archetype Ruler, and it was developed by Dr. Karim, of course, looking at some of the ancient Egyptian images and just noticing like where little dots and marks were. So we're going to use the pet that was previously mentioned,
My old dog,
Goldie, and we're going to put her in the place of the witness. This is where we put whoever we're going to measure right here. And each of these dots is a kind of BG3. So with the HAR, we can measure all 10 types. And then we can also measure the different, oh, thank you. The different levels of energy that are off the body. So the first one is the spiritual, and then there's different levels of mental, emotional, vital, and then finally the physical. And often what we'll find is there's like a little tangle in the mental and the emotional, and that's keeping the spiritual energy, the spiritual information from actually manifesting fully in the vital and the physical. So let's take a look at little Miss Goldie here and see how she's doing.
and guys, this pendulum she has, this advanced pendulum, I've seen her walk and it be flying and then comes to a dead stop and she's still walking. And yeah.
So right now Goldie has a lot of this nice BG3 1 type, and her 2 is pretty good. She's doing good. So like as I'm watching us record, it's like it looks like, oh, she's moving her hand, but I'm not. It's kind of being dragged along, and I've watched other people do this, and it's like, yeah, it just looks like we're doing it, but
it looks totally like you're doing it.
It's kind of embarrassing, but hey, I'm gonna go with it anyway. So we've measured all the types. Let's just check in on, just for fun, let's check in on one of her mental levels, see how she's doing mentally. So you can see that it's a little lower than her overall, but that's okay. It's still all there. So we take that away and see, we get kind of a bigger swing.
Bigger, yeah.
So we can use this for diagnostics. You can put different things on it. So it's like you can measure acupuncture channels, you can measure body parts, you can put things on it that you want to send into that person's energy. You could put supplements, you can put one of the you can put the biogeometry solutions, the bio signatures. It's all the thing is, you can be very, very creative with this system. And I've seen some of my fellow students just do absolutely amazing, mind blowing things, and I love it.
Talk about one of those.
Um, so, someone that I met in the advanced environmental home solution classes is she is planning on making these very big BG3 towers, and that's very cool. And so we have a little meeting with other students, and they talk about how, well, we couldn't, and this is how I did the Wi-Fi tower. She said I couldn't, access what we call the stress gateway point of a house, and so she just really amplified a power spot, and it kind of took care of her situation, which is why I was able to do the Wi-Fi tower, because there was no way we were going to access that thing.
Yes. So let's talk. So there's measurement. Mm-hmm. And I've seen you walk around my house with the pendulum, and then there's the idea of measuring a specific being. Mm-hmm. There's the idea of measuring a space. And guys, one thing I remember from the original podcast that I heard with Dr. Kareem was this acknowledgement from an architect's point of view of how many levels of energy there are. Like, even if you just go back to pre-electronic days, you go back to when they were building the cathedrals, there was a sensing, was a consideration of many parts of the environment, the angle of the sun, the slope of the rain, the energetics of the water. And we know from feng shui, there are energetics of the spatial relationships and color relationships. So what I like about this is it gets so specific in an age where we are getting affected by countless energies, and without architects who are really necessarily thinking of the impact on our biology. So, and in that original podcast, I remember Dr. Kareem talking about a chicken coop situated right next to, back then, I think it was probably 3G, right next to a 3G tower. Very sick chickens, totally sick all the time. They had no control over what they could do other, they kept trying to change the feed and change the drugs and all that. And finally, he did these paper amendments with different colors and shapes. And from that point on, the chickens thrived. So we've talked a little bit about measurement. The tools matter, the practitioner matters, or the intention and the clarity of being a vessel for it. Which deciding what kinds of frequencies matters, although BG3 is the base energy.
Yeah, BG3 is like the currency.
And then there's the question of amendments. Like you talked about a few. One is sort of with the acupuncturist point of view. You could look at an organism like my dog and be able to read what part of their body is stressed. And you found her kidney was, even though the vet found a swollen heart, Diana found the kidney. And then the amendments, she found which minerals would provide the best support for that. And the recovery was nothing short of amazing. I mean, I still get videos like, I can't believe whatever you guys did. I can't believe it, but I'm glad they didn't know what we did, because then they would try to disprove it. But let's go on. I remember the first time you came that you had like green and red little paper dots. And the second time there were clear things. The third time, these angled square things, the evolution. So, and I've heard you say two things about amending. First is measuring, and what you're measuring can be stress spots and it can be sweet spots.
Right. So either we're finding some place that we need to harmonize, or we're finding a place that we want to amplify.
And the nice thing is the last one you did, where you found this stress gateway, and you turn the stress point, you turn it, right?
Right. So when something that is, let's say, stagnant is set free, then it just flows all over. And sometimes you can create a situation where it just keeps on sort of building and building and building, and you can create a huge BG3 bubble for blocks.
That's so cool. And we'll have to follow up on that 5G tower, because that was part of our evil plan, was to turn the Death Star into the Life Star, right? Broadcasting nothing but good energy. All right. So, and so now those amendments, can you say anything about, like, I even saw you bring some beautiful shapes that I'll go get for the audience to see, but can you talk about what are the things that affect the energy once you find a spot?
So all the solutions or amendments are shape based, because shapes create certain wavelengths. And I've brought, for instance, these are the brain balancers from the system, and they balance the left and right hemispheres of the brain.
And as I was saying to you earlier, it seems like no surprise that they look like a king and a queen
Right.
from a chessboard, which is an ancient
Right.
archetypal expression of energy.
Right. And many of the shapes which are used, for instance, in the pendulums, are from Egyptian architecture and shapes in the old temples that Dr. Karim saw. He saw their usefulness, and he saw what they were doing.
And I think the main thing you do is you're part of a community that keeps testing and producing different amendments, and you're testing whether that amendment is getting the job done. Your pendulum and your heart can tell you beforehand what's going on, and then after you make the amendment, you can come back and check on the energy. Is there anything you want to say about the process of selecting the amendments, or because I have no idea how out of all the possible shapes in the world, how you would even begin to pick what to do?
Wow, how do I pick? So I have favorite ones, I think. One of the kind of universally used ones is the L90, which is just a 90-degree angle, and then there's a little cutout at the angle, and that one corrects and creates BG3. And so if someone wanted to not take one of the classes or both of the classes, they could just buy some of the L90s from one of the online distributors and put them on their windows and put them on their Wi-Fi, wherever there's electricity, and they would still get benefit.
So I think those are the ones that I bought for the neighbors' Wi-Fi routers. They're like, yeah, like she said, there's like a 90-degree angle, but there's a little round part out of the corner, and they're these clear sticky plastic things, very cheap. I just gave them to my neighbors and asked everybody to put them on their routers.
Yeah. And so one question also that people ask is, well, why is everything made out of plexiglass? Because we want things to be natural, and isn't natural better? The reason we love plexiglass in biogeometry is because it does not impregnate with other energies. So, like, for instance, when we make the biosignature emitters, which are made out of paper, you have to kind of dust those off every day because they'll get impregnated with energies. But the plexiglass does not get impregnated, which is something we like.
Right. That's the last round that you did with me. There were plexiglass, the yellow thing.
Yeah. Yes. So everything is shape based, and that means, for instance, we had the brain stands. Those are definitely a shape, but then also shapes are created by angles. And so some of the discs have different angles on them, and that creates a particular solution. Numbers also have an effect. And it's not like the number 7, but it's 7, like 7 things, 7 dots can be another solution. So there's number strips with just like little teeth, like 7 teeth for the number 7. And that's good for particular things. Let's see, there's particular numbers that are good for like correcting doorways or windows, for correcting different materials. So that's like another sort of layer that you can go into. You can harmonize materials as well.
So you alluded to there being a few basic things that people can order from the Biogeometry website. And I think one of those, you mentioned these plexiglass stickers that, like you just explained to me, will not be affected by other energies, that they'll just stay in that state without needing to be changed or dusted or maintained. And the second thing that you taught me that I could do myself was to get these what do you call this?
This is the Biogeometry pendant.
The pendant. And we have to tap and recharge this one because it's metal, it's not plexiglass. So it could have some, is that what I'm learning from you now?
Yeah, so you'll get like a little charger plate when you get your pendant, which I highly suggest you do. And you're supposed to, let it sit on there for like a couple minutes every day because it's working hard. It's transmuting a lot of energy so that you are doing better than you could be doing. I remember when I first put mine on, just the change in, I think it was like the right side of my body was immense. I just felt like energy was finally moving through there in a way that it hadn't moved through before. I was really surprised.
And then I see you personally have a second. Is that other shape?
So this is the L90. This is what all the cool kids have. You have the L90 and you have the pendulum, and then you're set with particularly like EMFs.
So what do you think about all the other EMF solutions out there? Like, do you only focus on biogeometry to harmonize all the energies?
So I'm sort of chronically curious. So I will often measure other EMF solutions. And some of them don't measure up very well, I hate to say. But at the same time, they do claim that they're using like a tri-field meter and they're measuring. But it's like I would kind of like to also use my tri-field meter on some of those and see what we get. There are some solutions that actually do create some BG3, and so those are the ones that I think there was one that I bought. Just so I could experiment with it a little bit.
Do you personally use grounding sheets or other things like that?
I have grounding sheets. I have linen sheets. I do all the things.
So if we think about someone in the audience, like I didn't even know, if you weren't my friend who walked in here and said, oh, by the way, I'm studying biogeometry and I'd love to practice. If that hadn't happened, I kind of put out of my mind that biogeometry would ever be accessible. I had this idea, it's just some architect way over in Egypt and it would be very expensive, or, tens of thousands of dollars or thousands of dollars. And yet, I was so lucky that you brought it straight to me and you started to make it accessible, not only because you're in practice to become an environmental home solutions formal practitioner, but also that you told me about these things I could do myself. I got one of the is it copper pendulums or brass?
It's brass.
Brass. I got one of the brass pendulums and I was able to go through hundreds and hundreds of supplements that were left over from my in the trenches days of being terrified that my son and I would get sick again. And so I was able to start to trust myself a little more and measure things a little more. And again, it just confirmed that a lot of the things I assumed were healthy were not. That vitamin that study proved would get rid of all your whatever just wasn't right for me. So the idea of customizing our own lives and sensing what is truly building our energy and what is depleting. And the funniest things was you would find these ley lines, and I don't know if it has to do with the metal, the north, south, east, west orientations of the polar fields. I don't know if it has to do with any underground water, but one reason I could relax into this system is the totality of this ability to measure many different types of frequencies. And that's when my son had this like earth-shakingly bad neurological seizures, Tourette's, all this stuff going on, like whiplash, ripping his tongue. And it took me at that time hiring someone who could measure 5 different sorts of energies, the microwaves and then whatever the Wi-Fi ones were, and then dirty electricity. And he did 5. And that ability to find the $9 fan that was next to my son, the head of my son's bed since he was pretty much born, was shocking. That I was like, whoa, I was only looking out for Wi-Fi. I was only looking out for that kind and that kind. And then when Diana walks in, I realized that it would be overwhelming for me to try to chase after every kind of energy that could be affecting me positively or negative. So instead, there's this idea of this holistic measurement of my space and my energy. So if you are out in the audience and you are wondering, wow, what could or couldn't this help me with? I know in my case, it was that I was just having these troubles with my space and I was getting sick all the time and my business wasn't going well. There were people who didn't even want to be in this space. And I would have never, like I said, it just seemed inaccessible. So out there in the audience, what are some of the top reasons people would be like, okay, this is worth me investing in?
So I think that one of the things that many people are concerned with is like you mentioned, the EMFs. And again, we're like, does it really work or is it placebo? And one of the first, let's say, very widely publicized, I won't even say experiments, I want to say victories, that Dr. Karim did was in this little village called Hamburg in Switzerland, and they had put in a Wi-Fi tower on the actually in the church, on the cross of the church, and people started getting symptoms. They were having more aches, more pains, nausea, tinnitus, insomnia, plants were dying, animals were having miscarriages. I think another thing was, the birds that usually came through that area were not coming through anymore. Obviously there was something very wrong. And so Dr. Karim came to the rescue, and for 6 days he went around and he corrected the village using his solutions made of plexiglass and wood. And at the end of 6 days, said, okay, I'm done. And people were, even before he was done, they were starting to get better. Headaches were leaving. And even 2 years later, everything is good there. That the birds have come back, animals and plants are healthy, symptoms are down. So that's pretty good if it's placebo. Because I'm all in favor of placebo because it's the body regulating itself. But that's a pretty good effect. And just to note, it's not just the Wi-Fi tower. It's the Wi-Fi tower feeding into these other energies, the Hartman-Banker line and the Curry lines, and then just creating too much chaos that needs to be harmonized.
So that idea that the kind of letting go of this idea that anything stands in isolation, like it was the Wi-Fi tower plus exactly where it was, and probably that it was somehow being amplified by other surfaces and energies that it was interacting with. So if, and guys, if I moved into I wish I had actually even realized this, that when I moved into this space, all of a sudden, like chaos in my life, and I attributed it to some black magic, but now I call you like my white witch over, right? But okay, actually, this is something I want to pause on, because I've been getting a lot out of Christianity and some of the energetics and those ways of thinking, and then it starts prompting me to not want to use. Okay, and yet I know only 2% of all of the energies that exist are even detectable by us. And that's maybe one reason I'm attracted to Christianity, is you're acknowledging there's such more powerful forces than ourselves, right? And to lay down your worry and realize you're not God. And there is some worry about using psychics where it could possibly be that you're trying to control the future, that there's a you trying to play God. So this is an interesting thing in that I think this science, it bridges a really interesting spiritual and material, sacred and timeless and yet practical, that it's caused me to get a kind of neutrality away from ideas like pure good and pure evil. Is there anything you want to say about your journey and how it's changed you to become a student in practitioner, a practitioner in training in this realm?
So one of Dr. Kareem's books is called Hidden Reality. And I think, he's basically talking about all the rest that we don't see, all that other 2%. And it's when you can start to understand those circuits and even measure them just a little bit, then everything makes a little more sense. And I don't know, I think I don't try to control things as much. I just see what will happen. Many years ago, I read a book called, I think it was called The Universe is a Green Dragon. And sort of my one takeaway from that was, you can have a goal, but you should probably let it go because the universe has something even better for you. And I think, for me, biogeometry is sort of organizing a little bit of chaos so that the universe can come in and do their thing. That's very woo-woo.
That's very woo woo. But and yet it's similar to the idea of imagining there's a loving higher power that has got your back. And this feels to me like a similar idea that you can get support that you never imagined could ever exist. Like things could be better than you ever imagined they possibly could be. With simple neutrality and observation and a willingness to engage and an agency and a curiosity. That's what I observe with you is you're endlessly curious. And I want to shift towards how did you ever, Miss Curious, we're both nerds. How did you ever stumble across this as being like, I'm willing to invest years of training to learn to do this?
So I'm not sure, but it may have started a long time ago. One of the things that Dr. Kareem incorporates or has incorporated in how he thinks about buildings is the German biology building, Baubiology. And years ago, it must be like almost 30 years ago at this point, I had a Baubiology practitioner come and check out our house. And I was just like, wow, this is so cool. About electricity and grounding. And it was my first introduction to EMFs, which I had not even thought about before. And actually, I'd wanted to become a practitioner because they had a home study program, but I couldn't finish it because I was, the mom of a toddler, and that was like way more important. So anyway, that was always kind of in my background about how buildings can affect our health. Kind of fast forward, went to acupuncture school, did a bunch of energy stuff. So, then we're looking at the other, 98% a little bit. And one day, someone who I'd met in the Rosalind Briere classes came, and she was my patient, and she had some kind of diagnosis. I don't remember exactly what it was. It wasn't terribly pleasant. She brought out this pendulum, and she said, well, why isn't this protecting me? And I'm like, well, what is that? And she said, these are biosignatures from bio something. And so, of course, I ran to the internet and I fell down the rabbit hole of biogeometry. And at that time, it was the beginning of COVID, lockdowns, and everything went online. And so that made me able to take the foundations class and take the advanced class, which I don't think I would have been able to take without that happening. And then I kind of resisted doing the home environmental solutions. I resisted it very hard. And then I just had to do it. And now I love it. Now I understand so much more. And I am able to apply it better to acupuncture, um, which makes going to work so much easier now that I can know a little bit more.
Yeah, I think, and that's similar to how my teaching movement longevity has evolved. I can measure whether something is creating a harmony in the body that's going to stand the test of time versus just trusting that stretch is the right one. I see you do that every time that we work together with the acupuncture or the home visits. You're always checking the truth of something. So one thing I wanted to check in, are you? But and yet the back of all of our minds is always like, is this just placebo? Is this just placebo? I want to go a little further into that. You told me, and I mentioned, well, this is a dog. The dog didn't know what we were doing. And yet, of course, it could be that we're transmitting love. It could be this is all BG3 is love, and the dog felt my love sent through the text that went to the owner. And honestly, guys, I had sort of poo pooed some of the idea that there was such a thing as quote black magic in the world. I was like, oh, that's just pseudo, like that's just a racial profile of a certain ancient traditions. That's got no validity to it. And then particularly like voodoo, right? Where there's a caricature of someone or their hair or some way to represent their energy. And then you use that vessel to transmit negative energy onto someone, or you use an object and so this idea of endowing something with an energy, I rejected. I was like, that's just, you're just making, uh, projecting, you're projecting onto these innocent poor people. But then when I saw how with this work you could project positive energy, I was like, oh my goodness. I realized that we could send energy from very far away to other targets and we could receive energy from very far away. And the nice thing is having agency here to purify at the same time. It goes back now to ancient religions where there are, you're washing your hands or you're blessing with the holy water. This idea that there's a way to transmute even the worst energy that you come across. So you want to show a little bit, and so that's one thing just to put in our hats. Like, am I transmitting negative energy towards someone, or am I perceiving anti BG3 energy somewhere? And always going back to the optimism of how good things could be. So you want to talk a little bit about, you said that horse project you did really helped you feel, see the difference between what you could call placebo and what was really happening.
Yeah, so super exciting horse project. So this is an ongoing project, and I'm working and collaborating with Katie Anderson. She's a board certified massage therapist and a VODR certified manual lymphatic drainage therapist. In addition to working on horses, she does lymph and also cranial work on horses. And so with the horse project, what we're using are these little stickers called cross links. And she had actually sent me a video of someone using a cross link and almost using it like a pendulum to find the point to put it on. And I kind of went, oh, how can we use this? What's the best way to use this? So I started using those on points with patients. And then she asked me to see if I could find some points for horses. And so using the picture of the horse as the resonance of that individual, because images carry all the information. Images carry all the information. I would put that on an acupuncture map, and then from there, I can figure out what channels are blocked and what points need to be done. And then I would send her a picture of the point. She would go to the barn. She would put the cross link on those points. And in every case, the horses had very good response, and she could tell that the lymphatics of the horse were was moving better than it would have otherwise. And I had the fortune to go with her one day to the barn and find the points myself using the pendulum. And we did find that sometimes the points were in a little bit different places than on the maps, which is okay. That's fine. In one case, I put the cross link on the horse's due 20 point, and immediately this horse stretched her head out, and she was opening her mouth and sticking her tongue out and yawning, just instantaneous. And there's no way I could make a horse do that unless I have powers that I'm unaware of.
I do want to, not that this is a medical disclaimer, really, but this is a medical disclaimer. We are not. She's an acupuncturist. I'm not a doctor. But the danger with placebo, like, let's talk about, like, placebo is still the best drug, the safest, no negative side effects. The worry, I know, at least from people in other, medical professional fields, and the worry for people would be, if I am believing something is going to work and it doesn't, or I'm believing it'll work, so therefore I don't take any other action. Like, I could sit here in this toxic mold and be like, I just believe the biogeometry is going to work. And the funny thing is, the way it was resolved I would have never associated the two things. I would have never associated the day she put the dot and then the next day, this weird thing happening with a loud siren sound from a fan. It was the weirdest, unrelated thing, but they seem totally related. The worry would be is, could there be a case where I'm just so sure that I'm protected from my pendant or whatever, that I'm sleeping with my cell phone against my head, or doing some other less cautious thing. And it sounds like you don't let your guard down. You're still using grounding mats. You're still doing all these other things. So can you kind of address that? Like, where could, and the other thing is, I could have an unqualified practitioner. Is it possible to make energy worse if someone doesn't know what they're doing?
So the thing with BG3 is, you're not going to make anything worse. If, say, you buy the home kit and you don't do it right. I think I want to circle back a little bit to BG3 makes everything better. We don't know what better is actually going to be, right? I mean, so I guess there was a little case where I went and I did someone's house, and she was like, well, now will my daughter sleep through the night? Well, I don't know, because I don't know exactly why your daughter isn't sleeping through the night, but her room does have BG3 in it now. There could be another reason. And I have to say, when I got COVID, I kept measuring maniacally my BG3, and it was always extremely high. And I'm like, what is going on? And it's not that, it was that my immunity was working, and so you can have symptoms and a healthy body will respond. I think one point of view that I kind of come from is that we are already healthy, and the symptoms are either from input or how we are receiving that input. So then back to placebo is, take other precautions. It's like we're doing all these things. We can think about, okay, we're doing all these things in the ethers. We're doing all this energy stuff, but let's bring it down into the physical by doing something in the physical.
If it hadn't been something I felt I had no control over, I wouldn't have tried it, probably. I mean, and if it hadn't been so easy, because you live in the neighborhood and I've known you forever and you're so generous, you're a very thoughtful and generous person. Like, and there were things, and guys, maybe that's the point here is, especially when you think there's absolutely nothing you can do about something, there might be a subtle energetic thing that you can do. And also it's like I heard some people, I hear people like my son talking about his friends getting their wisdom teeth extracted, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll probably have mine." And then boom, he gets exposed to someone who reshaped their own jaw without any dental support and any orthodontia, who said, "No, I don't have to give in to doing some harsh invasive thing. Like I didn't have to give in to, and yet I was fully ready to just yield, like, oh, I guess I'm going to get sick from the 5G. I'm going to get sick from the mold." So I think that's probably one place. Like, if you can't do anything about where you live, you might as well make the energy the best possible in that spot. Is there anything you want to say about that?
Um, I want to say yes. And that, all the biogeometry solutions are, I mean, particularly like the personal ones and the biosignatures, they're considered adjunct solutions. If you need to get a cast on your arm because you broke your arm, please don't do that. I mean, there are some things that Western medicine is very good at. Um, yeah, just cover all the bases, I think.
And that's one reason I call this the architecture of how of health, is how much our environment affects us. It affects us much more than we would think at a surface level. It's, the frequencies of light, it's the air quality, it's and this is one reason I just love this practice. And honestly, guys, with the inflation, the money we spend on where we live, at least here in crazy overpriced Santa Cruz, California, the amount we spend on our space, why not make sure that the space has got the best energy, possible on an energetic level, of course. So, all right. So I'm in the audience. I'm very curious. What do I do next? There's probably a couple of websites or books. Tell us a little bit more about the path, dipping their toe and going a little further along in using the best parts of this.
So probably the first thing you want to do is go to the Biogeometry website, which we will link in the description. And from there, you can choose courses, you can choose personal solutions. There are home solutions. If you're looking for a specific thing and they don't happen to have it at that website, there are other online distributors. Sometimes you got to chase them down a little bit. There's a car solution for EMFs in the car. Let's see what else. There are 3 books. There's Hidden Reality. This is Dr. Kareem's latest one. Back to the Future. And then there's one just on the biosignatures. Now, in the back of that one is something called a clearing card. And so if you get that one, you can copy the clearing card, and that can be very useful. You can just clear a space with it just by kind of waving it around. You can clear body parts. It's very handy.
Great. We'll put those links in the notes. And
so this is our quantitative ruler, and it shows how much BG3 something has, starting with 100 going to 90. And so you put whatever you're measuring on this little circle, and we're going to measure this water and show how just turning the water glass will bump up that BG3. So first we're going to get our baseline. So I'm going to start out here and see where I start getting a clockwise rotation. And there we go. So it's always that exciting moment where you find it. So it's right at 300. So now I'm going to take this water and I'm going to do like 8 clicks clockwise and 3 clicks counterclockwise. And we're going to do the exact same thing, right? We're going to come in from the side. And there it is. It's literally off the charts. I have a different one that sort of extends this. So I'd say this is probably around 1,000. So that's just from rotating the glass. So you'd probably want to drink this water right away. But the other thing is that, and we did this at the advanced classes. You charge just one glass of water, and if everyone has the same sort of from the same well, let's say, their glasses get charged too.
That's crazy.
And so, do you think they do something like this with holy water?
Heck yeah.
Probably.
Probably. Uh, uh, and a question is, does this work in part because this is on this grid, or was it purely the 8 clicks and the 3 clicks?
It was the clicking.
Do you end up doing these little rituals like before you drink water? Do you click it 8 and 3?
Yeah, so you can do this with anything that's kind of round. So you can do all your bowls.
You can like your food.
Yeah. Yep. You can totally charge things up.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. But we probably need to start our own club so that we don't feel weird when we're all doing our. And honestly, I like if you think of the rituals, you think of smudging a space with sage and you're doing it in a clockwise or counter, there are protocols that people have used. And I've used one of those before, Diana, to clear this space. I had the weirdest experience with a fire clearing, guys. And, I've been a skeptic. I want to know the hard and fast science. I don't want to be fooled. And this just keeps, I'm never surprised to see the results of what you're doing here. I love your work. All right. So, Biogeometry website, personal solutions and home solutions. Okay. One thing we did not cover. Do you know what this would not help with at all?
So I think there's like kind of the obvious things, like if you actually needed an operation or something like that. But that said, if say you had to get your appendix out and you had a lot of BG3 going on, it would be there would be a bigger likelihood of success. I mean, BG3 is sort of like it's like our home base. So even if the results may not be what you think they should be, it's still good. It's all good.
This I finally thought of what it was. So this is one of the reason was such a divided opinion during COVID about what this immune crisis was. And people who had researched the time that radio waves were invented and used, or even like the military when they started to use sonar in the oceans and animals, just lots of animals getting sick, and they're then having to be policies to restrict the type of energy waves that you could use in which parts of the ocean. And so some people saw COVID as an expression of a healthy immune system, getting rid of all these toxins that their body was getting as people were adapting to new 5G, new frequencies, all these new towers going up and new frequencies happening all the time. And the body, a healthy body, having a very strong reaction to a large energetic change. And so, and I'm neutral about everything, but I did experience, like when I saw the shifting of the energy of that one 5G tower and how stoked the frogs were. I think there's more of this kind of Mission Impossible mediating the ever-changing frequency environments that we're in. I think there's just, and honestly, the website sells out of a lot of these affordances fast. I think this is a very growing art form and much needed in a time where we feel like things are changing way too fast. And yet, guys, at the end of the day, I still stick my feet in the earth and put my body in the sun. But I'm definitely going to be clicking my water 8 times to the right and 3 times to the left. All right, Diana Moll, you're here in Santa Cruz, California. Do you work with what kind of work are you doing? Do you only work with people in person, or as an acupuncturist, or do you do remote energy stuff with anybody?
Um, no,
No remote work. Okay.
no, not like officially.
And you're still working towards getting. Oh, and so on the website there'll be a list of practitioners who have completed all the trainings, right?
So you can find a certified environmental home solution practitioner on the website. I can only work with friends and family as an advanced student in process.
And wow, and she's done such great things for me because you're my friend. I can't wait to see what's coming next, or what can happen with you guys and your and getting help, the help that you need. All right, well, I think that's a wrap. This was definitely an episode that is so aligned with our mission here at the Architecture of Health, practical and non-invasive ways to create environments where we can feel better than we ever thought we could. All right, Diana, that's a wrap.
All right.
Yay!